Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
Welcome to another edition of Weird Web Radio. I'm your host, Lonnie Scott. In this edition, we are talking to Heather Greene. Heather's a freelance writer, a journalist, and editor in Atlanta, Georgia, and she's currently the managing editor for the Wild Hunt blog. Any of you pagans out there should know what the Wild Hunt is. And it's the only daily online news journal that serves the global pagan, heathen, and polytheist communities. She's also an acquisition editor with Llewellyn Worldwide. Heather's first book, Bell, Book, and Camera, A Critical History of Witches in American Film and Television, is already out there and available, I know, through Amazon, and you can check through any of the booksellers that are out there that should be able to get it for you. Outside of writing, Heather has spent her life surrounded by the performing and visual arts. She directed theater in New York City with the Mystic Theater Company. She was honored to perform in a theatrical dance experience at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Salt Lake City. Heather has a BA in Film Studies and French from Wesleyan University and a Master's from Film Studies from Emory University. She also studied film and theater at Cornell University and at the University of Paris. She's a member of the Circle Sanctuary, Covenant of the Goddess, and the Religion Newswriters Association. In this episode, we're going to go over some more details that I think Heather has shared before into her own practice of witchcraft, and you'll find out what it is that makes her unique. And what is cool about her own practice, what got her into writing, why she chose to write such an enormously great task of an undertaking with the history of the witch in American film. That book is incredible, folks. You really need to get it. And we'll touch on some of the points that may really surprise you about the history of film, the witch, and how women have been viewed in our culture. Now, I want to say a couple things before we get into the show. There are some audio issues on my end. I don't know what it was, but there was a great deal of distortion. I did the best I could to take all of it out in post-production, but you will notice it's not quite the audio quality you're accustomed to from my show, and I apologize for that. I'm looking into every possible reason for it to make sure it does not happen again. You'll be able to understand me. It's just not great quality. Secondly, there is a section in the show where Heather and I get into what we joke about calling, we've created a pagan fitness program. And it has a lot to do with why we think moving the body is important, why taking care of our bodies is important, and getting out and exercising and doing different things, and really trying to overcome some of the limiting beliefs that people have, especially in the pagan community, about physical activity. One thing we didn't make clear is that in no way, shape, or form do we hold anyone with disabilities of any kind to some lesser degree of light. I want you to be able to do what you can, where you can, when you can. There is nothing about your abilities or your disabilities that should stop you from doing what you can, where you can, when you can. I will always accept and support you no matter what your abilities or disabilities may be. So, please accept my apology for not making that clear during the course of the episode. You can be a big help to the show by subscribing and rating Weird Web Radio on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Let the world know what you like and show some love. Share the show on your social media to get the word out to everyone. You can also gain access to the bonus audio sessions that I hold with my guests, along with all the other fun rewards by joining the membership. Just go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio or go to weirdwebradio.com and click Join the Membership. It only takes $5 a month to get started, at the level of which all those bonuses really start to get cool. That $5 is less than I paid for the caramel macchiato that I'm drinking today. That funding helps keep this show going. It helps keep this show growing. If you happen to be looking for insight into your life, your problems, or your challenges, you're ready to get answers to those questions that are keeping you up at night, maybe you just want some more direction. I'm also an international award-winning tarot reader. just go to tarotheathen.com and reserve your reading today. That's all for now, folks. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Thank you for being here, and stay weird, my friends.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Heather Greene to the show. Heather, thank you for being here on Weird Web Radio.
Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking to you for quite a while. Most people probably know you, or they have known you until you released your book, as the publisher of the Wild Hunt blog. And in a position like that, I can say that you are probably as neck deep into the world of paganism and witchcraft as anyone could possibly be. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I suppose. I'm sure there's people that know a lot more in any topics, any single topic, but I have to keep my eyes and ears to the global scope of what's going on constantly on a daily basis. And so, yeah, in that respect, probably more globally and widespread than most people. Maybe not as deep in some areas, but definitely widespread. I keep my attention on, try to get my attention on everything going on.
That's great. Now, do you personally identify as a witch?
I do. I generally don't talk much about my personal practice, but I do. Pagan witch. I studied Wicca for many years, and I'm not active currently with a group, but I was and still am part of a Wiccan group in Atlanta, even though I'm inactive at this point.
Well, what got your interest to be involved in paganism in the first place?
Well, that was kind of the story like most people. I was in college and I didn't grow up with any kind of real religion, very secular. So I was left to explore on my own and was interested in college, and picked up Ray Buckland's Big Blue Book, and that just kept me going. And I loved it. It spoke to me. Started practicing on my own, started working with a Wiccan group, loved them, fantastic people, and that really spoke to my spirit. And that was way back. And, I don't even know if back then I knew the term pagan. I knew witch and Wiccan, but went on from there. Eventually joining Covenant of the Goddess and meeting more people, etc.
All right, cool. And when you got the book, it's funny, friends of mine always used to call that Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book of Wicca.
Yep, that was
it. When you get the book, you start reading into it and things, you start to build an idea of what witchcraft might be like going forward. And then you start practicing witchcraft. And how do those two experiences, sort of reflect on each other? Was it different than you expected once you got going?
Yes and no. I think for me, I'm very much a solitary practitioner. Everything spiritual for me is very solitary. So joining a group was excellent in many ways, but difficult in other ways. However, the book was the perfect introduction, even though the tradition and the structures and the rituals and a lot of the stuff in there were very different from the group that I eventually joined and that I've been with for 20 years now. And I loved the group. It was a great way. You can't learn from a book the way you can learn from other people in a live experience. And so the biggest difference for me was the book is intellectual. It's telling me stuff I'm trying to practice, but joining the group was experiential. It was spiritual. It was connecting to people. So it's a different learning experience, and both are important in practice, I believe. The traditions were different too. I don't know if that I think answered the question.
That's all right. You described yourself as a solitary, although you're getting involved with groups. I understand exactly what you mean by that, by the way. that's going to shape your practice in a different way than those who are always involved with groups all the time, everything they do. Are there specific parts of your practice that become daily or connect you to your witchcraft in a way that others may not be aware of or they would find different?
I based on the tradition that I studied with the Wiccan tradition, I have elements and stuff that are in different places than most people, so that would surprise people, and it throws me off sometimes when I'm reading tarot cards or whatever. But my daily practice, since I did not grow up with a religion that required ritual worship, etc., that kind of a thing, I don't do that. I cannot be that type of pagan. It's not in my nature. So I'm also a Gemini, so we're not very good at doing the same thing all the time. My daily practice is I read a tarot card every morning and meditate on that, which keeps me going and focuses me on the day. So I'm always connected to that. I also will sit outside. I do my daily stuff is very on the fly. What do I need right now? Connecting to my spirit, connecting to what I need on a greater basis than just I'm hungry. What do I need right now? So I have ways of connecting and grounding, and those kind of techniques are excellent to have. They're not daily practice in terms of worship, but they're daily practice in terms of spiritual health.
Yeah. Now you mentioned elements.
Yeah.
They're different for you than others. They would be surprised. How so?
We're getting into ritual practice here. Basically, most Wiccan traditions that I have come into contact put air in the east and earth in the north, and I don't. Those are the two that I flip. I have earth in the east and air in the north, and that confuses a lot of people who are outside of the tradition that I'm in. And there are people in my tradition that it makes sense for us. So hey, it makes sense to me. And there's some other symbolism with that. I know, like for example, tarot cards use of swords in traditional tarot as an element of air. For me, that's an element. That's a symbol of fire. So things get confused in terms of practice with some of the stuff that I do. But it's my practice. I make no apologies. It makes sense for me spiritually. I'm going to go with it.
I like that. But you're right. Ultimately, what you do has to work for you. Especially the more solitary you are, you're not trying to make it fit for anybody else.
That's true. That's very true. I mean, I'm not afraid of pop culture magic, which I'm fascinated by pop culture magic. And, I've used music, pop music, classical music, Irish music, for ritual, for spiritual meditation, for magical spells. So, I use what works, what speaks to you. And that's where I come from, in terms of being solitary. And, but I think learning from a traditional group as well, it's kind of like when you learn art, and I always liken it to that. I was a dancer. You have to learn basics of ballet to be able to do a modern or lyrical or free-form dance. Knowing the specifics of traditions, the structures, helps you be more free and more creative in your practice.
Since you said you were a dancer, a discussion been having privately with a friend of mine about incorporating our body into magic and making our physical body being more important and taking better care of ourselves overall. Have you incorporated dance into your form of magic, and how important is the physical body to your witchcraft?
Absolutely, yes, because music is a huge part of my spiritual experience. In fact, almost all private magical work that I do will involve music in some way, and as a piece of that, there is dance and movement. So that answers the first part of your question. In fact, the very first magical spells that I did as a teen, not really knowing what I was doing, not really knowing even that I was manifesting, and it was a magical act of magic, were through dance. And dancing is a way to build energy, and you can build a cone of power. You can get up the energy, and then at the end of the dance, send it off into the universe and create magic, so dancing is in a fantastic way, especially as a solitary, to create magic, to do magic, to perform magic. The spiral dance is a group version of that. Fantastic way to raise energy and to do magic. And as far as how important is the physical body, well, I'm a big fan of working out and eating healthy, and just on a practical terms. So yes, I think it's very important. And in order to keep doing this kind of magic, you have to have a healthy body. It's your temple of your spirit, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, I mean, you got a good point.
Yeah,
I think to some degree. It's almost as if, the better we take care of ourselves and the more active we get our body involved, it is undoing curses, and just so much of our modern culture is so bad for us in many ways. Mm-hmm. And just getting up and active. And like you said, trying to be more mindful of the things that we eat. And I'm not perfect. Don't by any means think I'm standing on a pulpit up here, folks.
I'm not perfect either. Believe me, I had some ice cream last night. Yum.
Yeah. But, this is something I saw somewhere else too. They said it's sort of like you're uncrossing yourself every time you take better care of yourself. And I like that. I like that thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you also you have many levels of why your body needs to be taken care of. I mean, from practical, from a very practical standpoint, I got a lot to do, and I don't want to hurt, and I want to be around as long as I possibly can. And they say temple of the spirit. And so, this is the body is the venue that the spirit lives in. And so if you want to have a healthy spirit, if your spirit really want to stretch it, you want to stretch your spirit, you want to stretch your soul, whatever word you use for it. You need to keep the cells of your body healthy. Because they're just more comfortable. It's like sitting in an armchair. If you're sitting in an armchair with all the springs sticking out, you're not going to be comfortable. If your spirit's sitting in your body that's unhealthy and hurting, it won't be comfortable. So so I look at it in that respect. And then magically speaking, I also believe in the mind, body, spirit, heart connection. So you have to keep all of those things healthy to live a full life. You have to exercise your mind. Love, be compassionate with your heart, be gentle with yourself too. You have to have some kind of spiritual connection and practice, and you have to keep your body healthy, and you keep all of that going, you're whole. And it's hard. This is not like I'm saying it like it's easy, like, yeah, I got this down. No, there's some days my body is hurting. I went to the gym today, I'm feeling good, but I haven't hugged my kids yet. So some days one thing goes, and I think it's a daily, I think that's a daily process. You constantly have to go, okay, what didn't I do today? What do I need to do? I didn't read any books. I didn't feel loved. I didn't love myself. I didn't work out, whatever the case may be, it's daily, hourly chore to do this. I'm not the expert. That's what I'm saying. That's just my mission in life.
Yeah. No, and I think it's important. And it's great that you share your own thoughts on the matter, because we do need to get up. We need to be more active. And, I'm a professional hypnotist, and I help people with weight loss. And a lot of times the objections will come around that I don't have the right workout clothes. I can't afford to join the gym. I don't know, what to eat, on and on and on. And look, if you're one of those people out there that thinks I don't know what to do, or I don't have the right clothes or the right gym membership, just go for a walk. Don't worry about having the right clothes or the right gym membership.
Yeah, keeping a healthy body is not about the gym. I happen to love the gym. That's just my personal thing. That's what keeps me going and excited, and my blood flowing and everything. But I have my parents, they're in their 70s. They don't go to a gym. They just walk. And that's what keeps them going. Or, they go out for a walk to the store in some places, or just eating a little bit healthier, eating instead of eating a whole gallon of ice cream in a sitting, half a gallon. I did not do that last night. I just, not that much, but and it's not, and we're not perfect. We're also meant to enjoy. And that's part of body health too, is to have pleasure too, because that's a very physical experience. So eating something, having, a glass of wine, which I will do, having an ice cream, or you can't be eating lettuce all the time.
Oh God, no.
You know what I'm saying? So it's about balance is really what it is. So some people go to the gym, and some people enjoy walking. Other people take dance classes. Other people play sports, or whatever the case. Other people garden. Gardening is a great physical, can be a great physical activity. So just generally do some sit-ups, or jump, or walk, or whatever works to get your blood flowing. Is all that's needed,
That's right. Take care of that temple.
Yeah, that's right. It needs a little wash. It needs a little going.
Yeah, and as fond as we all are of looking for ancient pagan practices, walking certainly qualifies.
Oh, it does. And you can do meditations when you walk, walking meditations, hiking. I mean, hiking is a great pagan physical activity. Get out in nature, you can stop and meditate, and then you walk again. And it's great physical activity, and it's so nice. I love a good hike.
Yeah, hikes are good. It's a good opportunity to get in connection with your local land spirits as well.
Absolutely. See? Two benefits in one activity.
Look what we've done here. We've created a pagan fitness program.
That's fantastic. You add in some picking up of herbal or vegetables or fruits, you can have, even add even more benefit to it. There's all kinds.
Right. Well, let's talk about your book.
Okay.
Book is Bell, Book, and Camera.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And I've seen it described as the story of the Hollywood witch being also the story of the American woman. That is quite a statement to make. Why did you decide to write this book?
Well, it was an idea. There's a story behind it, just like everything that, I tell. There's always a story behind it. Basically back when I was in grad school, and I have a film degree, I wanted to do this. This was going to be my PhD dissertation. And I decided for a number of personal reasons not to go on to my PhD. So it kind of got put on hold. And this was the time after The Craft and after all of those movies of the 90s had come out that I had decided, I saw the trend and decided, this would be a great story. And I was already practicing pagan and witch. And so I saw the connections being made there. And I said, there's something here. But again, I didn't go on to a PhD. So it sat. And then when I started writing for The Wild Hunt, before I took over as editor, I started reinvestigating these concepts, because at that time, it was when Beautiful Creatures and witch movies started to pick up again. I said, you know what? I need to go back to that. Maybe I'll do some articles on it. So I did a few articles and then realized, you know what? This needs to happen. The dissertation, the book needs to happen. So I contacted a couple of publishers. I got 2 offers, chose one, and went forward and started researching and watching movies. And watching movies and watching movies and watching TV shows and watching movies. and I don't want to say 5 years later, 2000, I think about 5 years later from the initial start, the book was released.
So you're saying you watched all of those movies?
Everyone listed in here. Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it's not, if each chapter has at the back a filmography, which includes movies as well as television television shows, specific ones or series. So yes, everything listed I've watched. Everything in this book. And a number of them I did not list because it turned out they did not need to be included. So yes, it was a lot of movie watching, and a lot of reading, and also a trip to the archives, which I absolutely loved the film archives in LA. I could live there. So it was fascinating. It was a fascinating experience, exactly what I love to do, combining the history of film with the history of witches, the history of witch representation, the occult, the birth of the pagan community, modern pagan community, and as well as feminism and the story of the American woman in 20th century for the most part.
Did you have a favorite film that really stuck out?
I always tell people don't ask a person with film degrees that question. I always say my favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz, and I talk about that right at the beginning of the book. It's how I start the book off. But other standout movies in terms of the study would be, always surprises people. I say Pumpkinhead, which was 1989, I want to say. I might be getting the date wrong. It's a horror film, fascinating representation of a witch in terms of, 1988, Stan Winston, Pumpkinhead. It's a horror film, but it has a great witch, and the way the film is done, I just was like, yes, I love this. Another standout film, which I think every witch should watch because it's interesting, is called, the name is going to escape me. I can open the book. It was done by the guy who did all the mummy movies in the 60s. Not mummy movies. Hang on a second. Not the Naked Witch. It's going to take me a minute to find it. It's the, oh goodness, why can't I think of the name of the movie now?
I don't know. Would you like me to hypnotize you, see if we can find it?
No, I got it. Hold on. Well, Carrie, first of all, Carrie is a fantastic movie, but the movie is called, I'm looking at the list right now, because my Hungry Wives, by George Romero. Okay, so he did all those zombie movies back then, but this movie was a bomb. But this Hungry Wives, 1972, it is a fascinating movie in terms of the study of witches, because it has a feminist streak to it that most movies at the time and then later do not. So it's fascinating. I got to watch everything, so I could talk about each one of them for a chapter's worth. Some of these movies. So, yeah.
What was it about the witch in Pumpkinhead that stood out so much? I really, honestly, don't remember.
She had a very small role, but the movie had a very Christian moral bent to it. Okay, very much so. But the witch itself was designed, it was filmed beautifully. And then the witch itself is what I call a amoral crone, a witch in the woods. So she kind of existed in this mountain community, as this liminal existence of magic in the woods. She was old, and she was hooded, and she was disfigured, and she existed despite this very Christian sensibility in the film. The witch was still there, and people would go to her for magic just because they needed something. So the whole interaction with her in there, in this world, was very interesting that they still would have her. She had her magic, and she says that her magic is from the devil. So it retained that sort of Christian sensibility in that respect. But at the same time, people went to her, and she helped them to define their own morality. So she wasn't bad, even though she was part of this Christian devil experience, traditional for a witch. She still was there to help people find their own morality. So she wasn't really bad, which was really interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced role she had, which is very unusual for horror films and for the films at that period of time, because that period of time was a satanic panic when most witch films at that point, which were coming on strong, were very anti-witch, very anti-woman.
Do you think that was a reflection of what was going on in our culture at the time, or were the movies having effect fueling the panic?
No, it's a reflection, and I talk about that. That's part of my book is to show how the witch, as she changes from 1896 to 2016, changes based on cultural changes and politics and et cetera. So I talk about that. And that period of time was 1988 was the height of the satanic panic. The McMartin case hadn't ended yet. And so this movie was produced at the very beginning of the witch cycle, which is what I call them when witch movies become really popular. This movie was produced right at the beginning of it. So it did not go, the witch itself is not fully negative satanic witch that you find in, movies that came out, the Witchcraft movies, for example, which started a year later. So she's a little more nuanced. But yes, it's absolutely a reflection of the satanic panic and the conservative Reagan era of the 1980s.
Now, you go back all the way in your book, all the way back to the beginning. You talk about the silent films,
Yes, I do.
Where witches start to appear. And if I remember correctly, you talk about they don't fill any moral role in the beginning.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's partly correct. In the early witches are the early witches generally are amoral in terms of the structure of the film. So the witches aren't bad necessarily. They aren't the evil Christian devil type characters that you see in like Witchcraft and those later movies. There was very little connection in the early silent era going forward between religion and witches. Witches were just funny things, characters, kind of like, silly, like fairies, whatever, just something. Or they were these amoral crones, similar to Pumpkinhead, that existed in some kind of natural place where they would help the other characters, define their goodness. So a witch might present you with a question and saying, are you good or you're bad? And then they help you find your goodness. So witches were very much just these old ladies in the woods with magic. They weren't bad. They just were, that's what they were. Or they were silly, fun little things that just flitted about and were mischievous.
Yeah. So
there was no connection to Christianity.
There you go. So when does that connection find its way into the movie?
In real terms, the very first, there was one in the silent era, but we can skip that. That was an anomaly. And then there's one, the very first connection between witches and religion in truth is the connection that witches were Druid priestesses, and that happens in A Macbeth by Orson Welles, which is another anomaly. Then really, they didn't start getting connected to Christianity the way we know it today until horror started to change its face. And the first one is a film called, The Undead, which was in the 50s, and then really it didn't pick up. It didn't pick up full steam ahead until 1968, when the production code, which was something that regulated Hollywood films, was taken down. And then you had Rosemary's Baby, and we never looked back after that.
It was game on.
It was game on. Rosemary's Baby was 1968, was that year, and they said, we're doing it our way, and if you've seen Rosemary's Baby, you know what I'm talking about. But there were some films prior to that. After, as the code was breaking down, there's The Naked Witch, and there's, the House of the Black Death. There are other satanic witch films prior to 1968, but they're very few. It's 1968, the code goes away, and oh my goodness, the first witch cycle happens, and it's fun. You got to watch those early 70s witch horror films. That is something special.
You also mentioned a concept that I never heard of before until I read your book. And it was, again, in the early films. If I remember correctly, it was the concept of a true woman.
Yes, the true woman and the new woman.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't make these terms up. These are from other film scholars, and I quote them. I have their names in there. The concept is that prior to the 1920s, is that the true woman is the woman who abides by the patriarchal expectations that have been put into place. So she's suppresses her sexuality. She gets married. She has children. She tends to the home. She plays her role as wife, plays her role as mother, doesn't necessarily have any schooling, maybe some, and then becomes a grandmother, and that's her life. It's wash clothes, cook dinner. It's all those kind of very traditional patriarchal expectations. That's the true woman. Then in the 1920s, with the coming of the right to vote and the expanding of our culture and the way things happen in that jazz era, a lot of women were able to get out of that cycle and see themselves in different ways and see opportunities. So this gave way to something that's been coined the new woman. So, whether they were flappers or not, a lot of women were having time to step outside the home, to have a career, or just, I think I said in the book, there was that period of time was also the invention of a lot of machines that made home life easier. So women had more time. So they were able to go to the movies even, or to meet with each other. So this concept of this new woman was born in the jazz era.
That was very cool. It was a concept that I had never heard of before, and it was funny. I was reading your description of the true woman, and I kept thinking, I don't think that idea has completely left our society.
No, of course not. It's definitely still stuck with us, and I think we see much more of the new woman, or whatever we would call it today, because I don't think the new woman of the 20s is the same as what we're looking at today. But that would be a different analysis than what I was doing with my book. But that period of time, the juxtaposition was very, very clear. Today, it's a little bit more blended because of traditions. We have a lot more of the new woman than we did back then. But it was very clear because when the jazz era ended and the stock market crashed, women went back to their homes. There was less opportunity for them. Women were needed at the home because men couldn't find jobs. It was back to that very patriarchal, very structured, very obvious expectations again. And you see that with films. I mean, that's very obvious with the film's reflection in witches, even.
In your research, researching this book and writing it, what really stood out to you? Something that you took away as a lesson?
Goodness, wow. What stood out as a lesson? I don't think I've ever been asked that question. I think what I wanted to prove with the book was that what I wanted to see with the book, which was the question, because I went into the book with the question, let me start again. I went into the book with a question because what I saw in the 90s was that the craft and practical magic were having an effect on our culture, and also reflective. The trends were very reflective of some stuff that was going on with teenage girls at the time. So I said, does that carry forward? Does that or carry back? So the question I went in is, does the witch, as a representative of, does the witch reflect something in our culture? Does it reflect the history? So I think what I found was that it does reflect what's going on, but it specifically reflects gender roles. And I think that became amazing to me. Seeing that that's so closely related. So I think that was the one lesson, I guess, I took away. I also was shocked by the production code, which most people would be shocked at that didn't know it existed, number one. And then I knew it existed, and I'd studied film for many years, but I had never sat with the documents, the production code documents, so I didn't realize how censored Hollywood really was. And so looking at that, I was just floored. So you get a different sense of our Hollywood experience as a culture when you know that from 1930 to 1968, we had an extremely censored system. It gives you a whole new idea of what our history was and is, and how to look at the decades of the 1920s, of the 20th century.
How much of that censorship do you think carries forward?
A lot, because basically that was the prime time of our development of our film language. So that Hollywood and American film language, and the way and what I mean by that is how our films talk to us. And every country has its own film language, just like it has its own language. So that was developed on almost entirely under. It was started to develop before, but it was solidified and made stronger during that censorship system. So when it went away, we already had the language. So breaking that is very tough, and filmmakers do it all the time. When you go to a film and go, oh, what did he just do? Why is he doing that? That's not what we're used to. That's a filmmaker breaking the language, and you're not comfortable with it, don't understand it. But like one of the things in our film language that was born during that period of time or solidified was when we know a good guy when they are petting dogs. If a character likes dogs, they're a good guy. So you have like stuff like that, or like if they celebrate Christmas, they must be good. That was solidified during that era. But in terms of witches, that's when a lot of the stuff we know about witches was solidified too. Black hats, the specific characters, the way they look, the green skin. Green skin, what happened during? That's the one thing everybody asked me about. Green skin happened under that system, and was solidified under that system as a marker for a witch.
So the traditional images of a witch that we have as a culture came from Hollywood.
That's a big statement. A lot of them, yes. Because there were witches before. I mean, and I didn't go back pre-Hollywood. And I say that in the book. I didn't go back. So some of it was carried over. But for example, I talk about how, early cartoons created a very unique type of cartoon witch in the 20s, and then it never changed. That was it. But the green face, Wizard of Oz is the only reason that we see witches as having green faces is because there was a technical problem on the set of the Wizard of Oz. She was not supposed to have a green face. The original books, she doesn't have a green face. The movies made in the 1910s, silent films, she doesn't have a green face. They were black and white, she didn't have a green face. So what happened was that basically, when they were doing costume testing on Margaret Hamilton, they put her dress on, which is solid black, and the hat, and put her hair up, and they were doing the testing with the Technicolor. And what happened was, because of the black with her tone of her skin, created like a line, and it looked like her head was floating. So there was a problem. How do you solve it? They figured, well, we can't have that skin color against that black, stark dress. So we either change the dress or change her skin color. They changed her skin color. So and not a single witch before in Hollywood has green skin. And then after that, tons of them. And that's why witches have green skin. The only reason. Thank you, MGM.
They changed Halloween forever.
They changed Halloween forever. It's fascinating. I talk about it, and the Wicked Witch of the West is the most influential on our culture of all witches. But statistically, from my research anyway, I could probably do numbers on that. But yeah, it's fascinating. And there's other things like that too. There's smaller things, but that's the big one.
Huh. Yeah, you say the Wicked Witch of the West is the most influential witch on our culture. I would almost say The Craft as a movie as itself stands up there as well, just because I've asked so many practitioners of witchcraft, what was your influence? What got you started? And I would venture to say 70% or more say, well, when I was a little girl or when I was younger, I watched The Craft.
Yeah, it's true. I if I was to make a list of like most influential movie witches on our culture, our over culture as well as our pagan culture, Wizard of Oz is definitely ranks number one. The Craft, the Blair Witch Project, those would be the top three, and then I'd probably go with Rosemary's Baby. In there in the top ones as well. They're the ones that, when I say influential, they're the ones that keep getting repeated over and over and over and over again. And The Craft, definitely. Charm's coming back. Sabrina. Oh, she's the other one. Sabrina, Bewitched, and are two of the other ones that are pretty influential. But yeah, The Craft, I would say, is probably the most influential on the pagan community. Specifically practitioners, because just like you, I mean, so many people watch that and were influenced. And I talk about in the book how that's one of the first films that really had a significant influence from a pagan. There was a member of Covenant of the Goddess who was actually on the set advising. And that's one of the first times that's happened. Not the first, but one of the first. The most significant anyway.
Yeah, that's cool. And this is a rare opportunity, too, for me to ask someone who has seen all the movies, all the shows. Is there a movie or a TV show that actually gives an accurate reflection of modern witchcraft practice?
It's spotty. I think there are points in The Craft that are pretty good, and that's because of the woman who was there consulting. There are moments in a movie like Practical Magic where you go, okay, that's real. But I really think I've said that I think The Simpsons, there's a Simpsons episode that did, at that period of time, that did a spot-on job in their own way. It was called Rednecks and Broomsticks. And it's the one where Lisa finds the three girls out in the woods practicing. So it's a very short little snip, but they do a pretty good job of representation. There's a couple episodes of some shows in the early 90s that really make an effort. Jag and what's the other one? Jag and Jag's the one with the Jag, and I can't think of the other name of the other show right now. Oh, The Mentalist. They do a decent job of kind of touching on it. That's pretty legit. But overall, in terms of practice itself, modern practice, I think the closest movie that gets to actually showing practice would be The Love Witch, which is most recent. It was very recent, 2016. Have you seen that one?
I have not seen that one.
I recommend you see it. It's a independent film by a woman named Anna Biller, and I reviewed it on The Wild Hunt, and I believe it's available now because it was running the circuit. But she had friends who are witches, pagans, practitioners of some sort, so she was able to attend and see. Her father was really into tarot. She explains how, so she had an awareness of it in modern terms, in contemporary terms. And the film is very campy. It's designed to be that way. So that some of those scenes are very campy, but it's about as close as you can get to a contemporary pagan experience shown on film.
That's very cool. The Love Witch. We'll have to go track that one down.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, folks,
You can find it.
the book is a mammoth, jam-packed tour through the history of film and The Witch. We could spend hours talking about that book and never cover every bit of it.
That's true.
Really.
And I love it, you know.
You really went above and beyond the Call of Duty. It's fascinating. And it's funny. As I go through reading the book, I keep highlighting something or making a note of something and going, grabbing my computer and searching down something as I'm reading it, because there's so much in there that you just never knew. I highly applaud the effort you put into this one. It's a great, great, great way to spend your time.
Oh, thank you. And you know what makes it even better is that you read a chapter and then you watch some of the movies. You don't have to watch them all, but you read a chapter, you're interested in some particular aspect of it, go watch the movie. And I have the list. I mean, you can have a year's worth of movie watching right here. It makes it even better because there's only so much I can describe. So, I describe it, and then if you watch it, it takes you to a new level of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I let you get out of here, I still want to talk to you about the Wild Hunt. So for those who don't know what the Wild Hunt is, could you describe it?
Sure. It is a news agency specifically dedicated to pagans, heathens, and polytheists worldwide. So we do news coverage and commentary on stories that are coming from within those communities to commentary on mainstream stories, politics, etc. We do pieces. We have an arts writer who does arts and culture. It's fantastic. We have professional news writers during the week. We have a slew of commentary bloggers, columnists who come from all over the world. We've got a columnist who lives north of the Arctic Circle. We've got another one who is in. We just have brought on a new one from. My brain is not working. We've got a columnist from Mexico. We got a new columnist in South America. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going with anything. We've got a news writer in Australia, Canada, the UK. So we try to cover. We try to cover lots of different topics all over the world to bring, the news of the pagan community together in one place. Yes,
that's very cool. And why did you go to the Wild Hunt?
Originally, because I was asked. I was doing public relations for Covenant of the Goddess. I was both locally here in Georgia and then nationally. And I met Jason, who was running it at the time, and he said, "You want to come do news for me once a week?" And I said, "Sure." So, that's how I got started writing and then eventually started to help him with more and more of the background stuff and writing. And then he decided he was going to retire and left it to me. So I took it over.
That's how you became publisher.
Yep, that is exactly how. Yeah. Because the mission's important. I believed in it. So I said, yes, we got to keep this going. Let's go. So
when it comes to pagan journalism, how do you decide what stories deserve spotlight versus others that maybe don't?
That's a hard thing to do. It's part of my job. It's discernment. It's keeping your eyes and ears open to what seems to be important. It's knowing news cycles, keeping an eye on what's going on. It's sort of part of what I do is very intuitive. Just like my magical and spiritual practice is very intuitive. So I just say, yeah, you know what? I keep an eye on social media. I have people out there telling me stuff, and try to understand that. And sometimes, that's balanced with also trying to give new people voices. So you could spend all your time focusing on people like Starhawk and Circle Sanctuary and big organizations and just constantly, because they're always busy. So I try to balance news and what these guys are doing and events like PantheaCon and Paganicon that are very well known, with spotlighting people doing good works that people don't know about. So it's a real sort of dance, you know?
Sure. And what are some of the biggest myths that you've heard out there about the wild hunt?
Myths about the wild hunt that were based in California.
That's the biggest myth.
It is, because we're based in the deep South in Georgia. we originally that's what I've heard that a lot. Oh, you have too many people from California writing for you. You're West Coast based. We've never been based in California. We have right now. We only have 2 writers from the West Coast, and our writers are all over the country and all over the world. So that's one of the big ones. I've been heard that we're a right-wing voice. I've been told that we're a left-wing voice. So I'm not, I'm like, okay, we can be whatever you want us to be. So yeah, I mean, those are the kind of, that's the kind of stuff I hear for the most part. The California one always makes me laugh. That's why I said that. But there aren't a lot of myths. I mean, everything that happens with the wild hunt is out there. I think people think we are in an office and we're a big company sometimes. I get that sense. I also get the sense that people think we have an enormous budget, where we can send people places and we just don't, and that's not true as well.
What do you think the biggest challenge is going forward facing the wild hunt and you as the publisher?
The biggest challenge is resources. We just don't have the money that we need to operate in the most effective way. And it's very unfortunate. Everybody gets paid, first of all, at the wild hunt for, and it's tiny amount. Anyway, so the biggest problem is again resources. So people think we have a huge budget, and we don't. Most of the people work for very little, and it's as close to volunteering as you can without being complete volunteering. Everyone gets paid a little bit. We don't have extra resources to pay for stuff, to send people places, to pay for admissions, to cover things the way I would like it see done fully. So we don't have that. We don't have a lot of money for administrative stuff, which we would need, and which we do need, and which big companies have. So resources, it's money. That's our biggest challenge.
Yeah, money seems to be the challenge for a lot of people these days. How can people help?
Well, we have what we launched last year at this time, a Sustainer Circle, which is just a monthly donation. A lot of people just donate $5 a month to it to keep us going. It's paying for news. Paying for something that does not exist anywhere else. Nowhere in the world will you find a bunch of professional journalists and writers focusing on pagan, polytheist, heathen religions from that perspective and giving news from it. So you're paying for something to continue that is very unusual and very important as a representative of these particular religions. And that's one way, is the monthly. And then some people just give us the monthly donation as well, which we'll get them randomly, sometimes sent to us via check. Sometimes we get, sent through PayPal. So those are the ways to help contribute. Yes. And we appreciate it.
But why is it important? Why should the pagan and polytheist community care if the wild hunt continues?
Because as I said, we're the only ones doing what we're doing. So when you go to a mainstream news site, religion section, and they're reporting on, for example, a pagan who, let me use a specific story. So a pagan who went to try to get his license wearing his horns, from his ritual horns that he uses as a priest. And this is just one example. When the mainstream media did it, they really took it tongue in cheek, made fun of the guy a little bit, didn't really interview him necessarily. It was kind of a standard, look at this silly pagan. he wants to get a license with his horns, and he's having trouble. When we did it, we went directly to him. We talked to him about his practice, whether or not we agree with the horns being on the license, or you or readers do or not. We actually went to him, talked about his practice. We didn't have to ask the questions. What is Wicca? What is your practice? What is paganism? Why are the horns? We didn't, and we go in with the inclusivity of not inclusivity, but we go in with the knowledge of identity, that this is some identity and this is something real, and we respect that. And so, because we understand the pagan community, since we're of the pagan community, so that's why we're important. We can do that.
Yeah, very well said. Now, before I let you get out of here, there's some standard Weird Web Radio things we must cover.
Okay.
Heather Greene, have you ever experienced a haunting?
Yes.
You have. Please tell.
Yes. Not a haunting like you'd seen in some of these movies that I watched, but I have been in a house actually pretty recently, where there was a ghost, or whatever word you want to use. I say ghost. And it was a visitor, an ancestor, who decided to show up because she had a message, and I used my tarot cards to communicate with her.
That's excellent.
It was great. It was fantastic.
How did you know an ancestor had showed up? What was going on?
There was lights flickering. There was candles getting put out. And there was cold feelings when the people that lived in the house actually could feel it and stuff. And so we talked a lot about it. I'm like, what are you feeling? What's going on? And then, basically the candles were the electric candles, and they kept getting turned off. And, from everything I know about these type of hauntings, a ghost is not going to be able, a ghost from 100 years ago would have no clue how to turn an electric candle off. So I knew that this was not someone from 100 years ago. It had to be someone that would died within the last 20 years. That there have been electric candles. So that sort of eliminated it down. And then based on it, I knew it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't aggressive because this wasn't something that was hurting anybody. It was just there, and it would just come in and out and go, and it wasn't. So it said, okay, this we can probably, let's try. So I used my my magical experience with I had to create a safe space to welcome them in, similar like you would do on Samhain, and then communicate. And it turned out to be the mother of the person that lives there, and she had a message, and it was neat. It was really a neat experience. Very, very healthy.
I like that. Did you decide it was the mother before or after you used tarot?
We had suspicions, but the tarot cards made it very, very apparent. Very, very apparent. The different tarots and the questions we asked. It was pretty exciting, and as the reader, I couldn't interpret all the cards. All I could do was sort of help, but the people that I was doing the reading for, the person whose mother it was the one who was like, oh, now I'm getting the message. I understand what she's trying to tell me. So it was a great experience. So that was the haunting. That was my recent one.
So this wasn't your home?
No, it wasn't my home.
So you were actually helping.
Home.
You were helping some people.
Yeah, it was a friend's home.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that takes care of the next question. Like, if you were going to help someone, what would you do?
With the haunting. Well, the first thing I told them when they started to have it, and I did this once before, this was a long time ago, another friend, I said, the first thing you need to do is understand that this is our realm, whether it's an ancestor, a ghost, or a fairy, or whatever the entity is, this is our realm right here. Tell them to go away. First thing you do, just state it. Go away. I'm not dealing with you right now, because you have control in this realm. They don't. So, that's what the first thing I said. Just say, go away. Go away. I'm not dealing with you. And then the next thing, then I advised them to write down what was going on, so I could sort of have an idea of who it might be, because that's the next thing. Is this an entity that's going to cause you problems? Is it an entity that's going to be friendly or mischievous? What are we looking at here? And then where did it come from? Then we started analyzing, well, could it be a land spirit? Is it something coming from the land, coming from the house, coming from an antique in the house that attached itself? Did someone die in the past in the house? We went through this whole thing. So yeah, one step at a time towards talking, because you don't want to open up a safe space to something that's going to cause you harm.
Agreed. Yeah, you never want to do something that's going to cause you harm.
No, don't go into the light, Carol Ann.
I will say, oftentimes the most dangerous thing in a haunting are bad floorboards, homeless people, wild animals, spiders.
Yeah, I don't deal with it a lot. It's not my area, but having practiced witchcraft for so long, it doesn't scare me like it would have when I was 10. So.
Good. Well, we have officially come to the end of the standard broadcast. We've covered quite a bit. We talked about your own personal practice, your book, the wild hunt, ghosts, and everything in between. It seems we even created a pagan fitness program.
We did, didn't we?
We did. Is there something that I should have asked or something that you'd like to talk about that I didn't cover? Or do you have any parting thoughts?
I do not have any parting thoughts other than read my book, but the only thing we didn't talk about would be Mystic South, which is something I'm involved with and believe in, and it's a another regional conference for pagans. It's called Mystic South because we didn't want to limit it actually to pagans and Wiccans. It's a more inclusive, and it was the most fantastic year this year we had because we had people of all different religious practices, from African tradition religions to heathenry to Wicca to New Age, more New Age stuff, and just Druids. I mean, it was just so fantastic. So I'm there regularly. I help run it. I'm not in charge, but I help run it. So I'd love to see more of it and it grow down here in the South, because we don't have a whole lot of it down here going on. So that's a fantastic event for anybody in the Southern region that wants to meet up with other like minds in the summer. And it happens in July.
Okay. Yeah, I say it's an annual event. And when does it go down? In July, folks. Where can people find more information about Mystic South?
They have a website. It's mysticsouth.com, I believe, or I think it's mystic/south.com. Yeah, it's mystic/south.com, and they can find out all about it there.
Awesome. Well, Heather, where can people find you and your book?
My book is at McFarlane, who's the publisher. It's also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and everything like that. I don't know if it's being sold in metaphysical stores or not. And my website, you can't get the book through the website, but there's some click-throughs, and I'm at I just changed my blog name, so it's heathergreene.net. I just changed the URL, so I got to make sure I didn't give you the old one.
It reminds me of people's ID at the bar, and I don't think it's theirs. So I start quizzing him, and I'll say, well, what's your sign?
That's awesome. No, it's at heathergreene.net, and it pulls up a picture of a giant black cat face, so you can't miss it. But there's some, I have some of my writing there, as well as what I do, and some links to where you can buy the book. Probably links to Mystic South too, and the Wild Hunt are there as well. Everything I do at this point is somewhere on that blog site.
That's very cool. Thank you again for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy to talk to you today, Heather. And thank you all for listening. As always, if you want to hear the bonus round of questions that Heather and I are going to get into, go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio or go to weirdwebradio.com and simply click join the membership. As always, stay weird out there, my friends.
Okay, gang, that's a wrap on this episode of Weird Web Radio. Once again, thank you all for listening. Now, it's time for you to go join the official Weird Web Radio membership. Go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio and you can choose your rewards and become a member today. Enjoy all the exclusive benefits, inside information, and plenty of bonus audio with each guest. Now, you can find the show at weirdwebradio.com and weirdwebradio.libsyn.com. The show is listed on Facebook and Twitter as Weird Web Radio, and you can find me on Instagram as just Lonnie_Scott. Please remember to rate and comment and share the shows that you like, and it helps others find us in all the search results. Shoot me an email if you want to be a guest on the show, or if you know someone that would be a great guest in upcoming episodes. You can send that to weirdwebradio@gmail.com. Seek the mysteries and delights in life, my friends. As always, stay weird out there.